AskReddit by deleted. Men. What's the most challenging aspect of masculinity that's rarely discussed or understood? The enormous amount of pressure we put on ourselves to be a good provider. I ruined my marriage with my dedication to building a career early on, which I rationalized at the time by saying it was for us. Now I've made it in my career, but at terrible cost. The drive to be a provider to the point where I defined myself with this label and derived all my value as a human being from my paycheck has had horrendous consequences for my mental health and family life. Edit. And now with inflation chipping away at even my modest success, I find myself trapped in a financial limbo, unable to advance our interests, egg bigger house. So the worse the economy does and the longer the housing market remains unaffordable, the worse my emotional distress becomes. My so has been distant with me in years of relationship, and either maybe he liked another person. So I told him that it's okay if he found another person whom he feel comfortable to live life with, and I just want to be informed than being fooled. Of course, with a heavy heart because I love him dearly. I thought I would hear a breakup message, but I was really surprised at the answer I received. He said, "I'm so scared of failing, of being not able to provide for you. I know you are not a materialistic type of woman, but you deserve things. You deserve more than I could give, and I cannot stop fearing for the day to come that I can't provide the life I dreamed for you." And X200B. Men, you deserve to love and be loved without worrying of being able to provide. I hope you all find a significant half that'll work with you side by side in difficult times, and cherish them in all your happy times. Thank you for an authentic and serious answer. As a man myself, I relate to your so. I appreciate how accepting you are. Thank you again. Hope you guys live a long and happy life together. It's not necessarily rarely discussed, but how isolated men typically are. No physical touch. No compliments. Little support. That kind of thing. I recently realized this for my 6-year-old son, and I mentioned it to my husband. My husband would cuddle and kiss our girls throughout the day, but he doesn't show the same kind of affection to our son, which saddens me and pains me to know that my son probably sees the different treatment too. Even though I've mentioned it to my husband, things are still the same. I have always been a rather gentle, emotional man. I also have my masculine sides. But I notice more and more that some people don't respect you, make jokes about you, and don't take you seriously simply because of such more feminine characteristics, and I hate it. I'm increasingly feeling like I'll never be truly respected from some people until I become a stereotypical masculine man. As a guy who cries easily at movies, songs, news, or just bummer thoughts, I hear you, man. It can be a hard road to walk, but it's good to hear my own thoughts echoed in someone else's words. We need to be supportive and complimentary with one another, even if it's only from an internet stranger on Reddit. So with that said, great tits, dude. If you're a large man, women will believe you are intimidating and a threat. Which I understand. But in my case, I was in a mosh pit 5 years ago and got knocked completely into this group of teenage girls, who I assume were in their first mosh pit, and next thing I know, one of the girls found me on Instagram and began accusing me of SAR. The way she described the incident placed a lot of focus on how big and scary I was, and that I had apparently been staring her down leading up to it. She was very clearly lying, but everyone believed her, and it wrecked my entire life for a few years. There was no hope in trying to defend myself because everyone's impression of me is of a big, intimidating man, and if I'm being honest, I suspect the color of my skin may have been a contributing factor as well. I'm better now and it's settled, but I'm scarred for life from this, and ever since then I never. As a big guy, I felt like I went from being a kid to being a monster once I hit puberty and got over 6 feet. People treat you differently. As soon as I got the least bit visibly angry, threats to call the cops would start coming, even if I wasn't being threatening and wasn't looking to hurt anyone. You're not allowed to be angry as a big guy. Hell, you can't really have any negative emotions. This has been brought up before, But whenever some people say it's okay for men to express their emotions and the men proceed to express their emotions verbally, why is it that when men do that those same people then tell the men to stop venting and seek therapy instead? The hell does that make sense? You tell a man it's okay to vent. He then vents and then you get uncomfortable and basically tell him to shut up and seek therapy. Do you not understand how degrading that feels? This has happened to me multiple times and I don't understand it. Dude, my wife literally gets up and leaves the room the moment I express any feelings other than positive ones. That you're told that you can move away from traditional masculinity but then you are punished for it. Especially by women. It's sort of a throw away traditional masculinity, except the parts that I like. The frustrating part is that the parts that I like are different for different women. It's impossible to get a clear consensus because it changes. So many of our relationships are directly linked to reputation and wealth. My very specific gripe is that, ever since Me Too, the focus of the conversation about men and masculinity has hyper-focused on what not to do. There's almost no discussion of positive healthy masculinity or good examples. I mean, Me Too absolutely had to happen and the creeps who got outed definitely deserved every ounce of what was coming to them. For the rest of us, though, it's real hard to find a healthy gender expression in a list of don't do's. I do gotta shout out all the bros at our bro pill for contributing to such a bastion of positive masculinity though. My biggest gripe with that whole issue is how we emphasize the faults of men and not the faults of women. It's like, women can say hey, this is what a real man is and how they should behave, without actually understanding what it's like to be a man. And men can't contribute to a conversation about what a woman should act or behave like, because we're not women. The whole having game thing. Emotionally tolling. I feel like we talk about how much we're allowed to be open about our problems. But then we never talk about how a lot of people end up getting burned for getting something off their chest. On the other hand, we are so trained to not talk about our problems. Sometimes when we do, we talk about it more, as a matter of fact, rather than directly talking about it. I can't actually stop doing that, and unless I do it in writing, I find it impossible to talk about my issues to anyone. Unless they ask about it particularly. To that I feel. Assuming men would experience and express their emotions like women do if it weren't for the pressures of the patriarchy, which isn't always the truth. For example, I don't usually cry when I'm going through my problems, not because I want to look tough or manly, it just isn't a natural reaction for me in many cases. I'm not emotionally stunted, I just express emotions differently. Men tolerate a lot of sexual abuse and harassment and brush it off, but even in severe cases it tends to be dismissed. Boys being victims of sexual crimes by women may be told to just suck it up, while the woman gets a pass. Of course it's not all cases, most people just don't know to react, but it's a common thing. Men are disposable. The feeling of being seen as disposable. Whether it is back-breaking labor or warm bodies on the front lines, I feel as though men are only seen on the value they can provide. Gusfring, and a man provides. And he does it even when he's not appreciated, or respected, or even loved. He simply bears up, and he does it. Because he's a man. What does a man do, Walter? A man provides for his family. Double quote. But maybe that is just me, and the culture has been swaying more and more for that instant gratification. While I agree with you, I think taking quotes from Gus Fring as actual life advice kinda misses the point of BB. Being judged by our height as if I chose to be below average in the womb. I'm average and feel this. Only really started when I got into online dating though, used to feel just fine about it and now it's something I become conscious about when thinking about dating again. Seeing all this stuff about body shaming being bad, but then people always say things like small dick syndrome whenever they see a car that they don't like. or Napoleon syndrome if they see a short guy get mad at anything. The balance required of you to appear confident and assertive without being a dick. You're constantly told that men are trash and that we're violent, perverted monsters, but then when anybody flirts with me as a man, it's basically an ironic joke that they want me for precisely the same reasons that they think I'm a disgusting, evil pile of trash. This right here. Walking that fine line between qualities like confident, mysterious, almost dangerous, and arsehole, to quiet, and a wimp. I'm terrified of approaching anyone I find attractive or even just want to talk to, because I'm broad-shouldered, bald head beard with tattoos. I don't want to be intimidating or called a creep, and it's just exhausting. I have social anxiety and body dysmorphia, plus potentially autistic, so anytime a woman glances at me at the gym I feel like I've done something wrong. To the point I can't trust anyone if they show any sort of interest, because it's probably a trap. I've pretty much settled that I'll be alone for the rest of my life, but I'm happy with my friends and my career has potential. I don't know if it's a common struggle or relevant to the post, but I felt it was good to share it here. I'm not short, but I feel for my short brothers. Being a short woman is fine. Being a short man is a struggle. They've done polls of women, and across the board, they all prefer a man who is taller than they are. It's more important than age, income, or looks. I believe it's a subconscious thing that women want us to open up and show true emotions. Except depression, sadness, fear, or unconfidence. Or anger, that's a big emotional landmine. Fail to show anger at the right time, you're inconsiderate. Show anger at the wrong time, you're toxic. Being told to man up after nearly killing myself sucked. That's awful. I hope it wasn't by someone close to you. Sending hugs over the internet. Learning how to become one with no father figure to guide you. What's weird is that people who grow up with a single parent because their other parent died usually do about as well as people who grew up with both parents together. In terms of employment, education, abiding by the law, etc. Most of your emotions are socially illegal. They are. I once went to a therapist who basically said be a man when I expressed the slightest emotion. The whole idea needs to end. Not saying we should dwell, but still. The fact that so many come to mind makes me feel bad. I think it's mostly the inability for us in the US to accept that masculinity doesn't mean devoid of emotions or feelings. When I read my children I Promise You Always by Marianne Richmond, I always feel the urge to put my back to them when I reach the part I promise you sorry. For my oopsies too. When my ways of right are wrong ones for you. Because I can never read it without my voice breaking and tearing up. I never got to see or hear things like that as a child, so I'm trying to be the change I want to see. Men's mental health.